We are something called alive, and will continue to be so until we become something called dead. When we become dead, our bodies decompose. We also become useless to those around us, unless those around us are practicing cannibals or necrophiliacs. The only dependable things about being alive is that, one, someday we will be dead, and two, we have several basic needs that must be satisfied or will be dead sooner. How to be happy, a manual, Fred Katz. 7. Pain. It seeped through every fiber of his being. As his awareness increased, the pain got worse. It fogged his brain, driving out all memory. Pain was everything. Cold started fighting pain for attention. The only possible motion was to shiver. Shiver he did. Mightily. Wet joined the battle for attention. Rolling to his back only made it worse. He levered himself into a sitting position. That made Wet a trifle more tolerable, but did nothing for the searing pain or the biting cold. He smelled a burnt smell as his senses started returning. He also smelled ozone. A voice called out from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. It burned through the marrow of his bones and rattled off the hillsides. Francis, it called. The one they call the Toad Smasher, it boomed. Come, it beckoned. A bright white light shone around him, obscuring his surroundings and making him totally forget everything except the voice, which sounded strangely like his father's. He felt himself lifted by an unseen force and accelerated to a very high velocity. Then he stopped moving abruptly. The light dimmed and he found himself in a tent made of glowing oriental rugs. The walls moved away as he reached out to touch them. The ceiling, though it seemed close, was definitely farther away than he was ready to accept or believe. He looked at the patterns on the wall and they moved. It was as if the act of looking at the patterns caused them to move. The voice came back in a more normal tone. It was his own voice coming from behind him. He turned, looked, and met himself. I figured that sooner or later you would meet me. This is not possible. Two sides of a coin? Yeah, something like that. Welcome to the other side. The other side? I figured that sooner or later. Yeah, the other side. The other side of what? Trust me. Yeah, right. We're on the other side of what? Just where exactly is that? Here. Where is here? This is existence. Existence. For eons, mankind has puzzled over the mystery of existence. Religions form to fill the void. Mankind has been searching for the meaning of existence. Most of the time, he asks himself all kinds of questions. None of these questions has a meaning in ordinary life, because from day to day, we are unaware of the true nature of existence. Over time, mankind has erected a barrier of games to cover the ugly truth/beautiful truth, depending on circumstances and viewpoint. Here is as immaterial as there. Past is as immaterial as the future. All we have is now. The rest is a game, made up to attempt to deal with eternity. You probably notice that there is only you and me here now. Yeah, so. Actually, I don't exist either. How can that be? I see you and hear you. Do you really hear me or see me? You are there, aren't you? Be that as it may, let it suffice to say it is all a matter of trust. How much do you really trust yourself? It is reflected directly in the way you trust all others. Others? There are no others, just you. What do you mean, just me? Regard that little red oval in the wall over there. Look very closely. Stare hard if you have to. The LNN 315 to Mobile rumbled south out of Birmingham on the main line. Chet and Doug sat in the cab and stared down the tracks. The 315 consisted of 4 late Model G locomotives and 350 assorted freight cars, some full, some empty. Doug and Chet had been in the cab since Nashville and would sleep in Mobile at the end of the run. The central Tennessee countryside slid by outside the windows. A small black and white TV sat on top of the control panel. Sally Jesse was interviewing transsexuals of both sexes. Chet's mind wandered toward home and family. He picked and gnawed at the argument with his 15-year-old daughter over the 22-year-old bum she was found in the back seat of a stolen car with. It had cost him a ton of money to get her out of juvenile. She stormed up the stairs and locked herself into her bedroom. When he had left for the yard that morning, they had had more words. It troubled him. His wife, as usual, had abdicated all responsibility for her children's behavior. It was hard for a railroad man to raise a daughter. Between the schedule and the lack of help, Chet had no idea what to do. If he was strict, his wife undermined his discipline when he was away. If he was easy with her, she took advantage of him and got into trouble. At 36, Chet thought that he was too young to have grandchildren. It was only by luck that he didn't have any now. Chet was angry with the boyfriend. He knew what the bum wanted. It wasn't marriage and a family. It was something much more primal than that. Chet's feelings towards him were primal too, though of a different sort. He pictured his hands on his daddy's 10 gauge, pulling both triggers at once. He wanted to put that bum's entrails into another county. He wanted to keep his daughter safe. It bothered him that he couldn't do it from where he was sitting. He could see it. He knew that they were together. That bothered him more. Doug was asleep. He hadn't slept at home. He had a business to run. His wife couldn't live on a fireman's wages. His wife was too highborn to work. They had fought about that often. She always won. A Southern lady always has the last word. Doug dreamed of a hammock between two oak trees hung with Spanish moss. He dreamed of gentle breezes rocking the hammock. He dreamed of July afternoons and sleeping hounds under the shrubbery. He dreamed of mint juleps and fried chicken. It was hot and noisy in the cab, but neither man noticed, nor did they care. Mobile was half a shift away, and the signal indicated a clear block. I could see into both their minds. Try that green one over there. The bus lurched over the detour. The driver muttered a mild obscenity as he picked his way over the dirt road. The auto club knew nothing about the construction. If they had, the manager of the band would have selected another route. It didn't matter now, though. The band was running late for their scheduled performance, and it was not going to be easy to make up the lost time. The tree branches reached out for the side of the bus. So much for the paintwork, mused the driver. It was like I was there. You were / there. I still don't quite understand. Okay, try that orange patch on the floor. The bullets kicked up little fountains of mud around the soldier as he ran to the next little area of safety. He locked and loaded another magazine into his M16 and motioned his comrades to advance as he fired into the jungle ahead of him. Splinters rained down onto his helmet as bullets tore through the jungle canopy above him. He thought he got one, anyway, as he jammed another magazine into his weapon. His comrades laid down supporting fire as he ran to a large tree 30 feet away and ducked behind it. He could hear the roar of the phantom as it dropped its load of fire and death into the jungle ahead. Still, they kept shooting back. Is this real? Yeah, that was at least 30 years ago, and I was never a nom. But you were, at least 20 million of you, not counting non-humans. I know I wasn't there. I can account for almost all of my time. Besides, I don't remember it. Oh, it's deeply ingrained in memory, all right. The scars are deep and permanent. I don't see any scars. Consider that green spot. The water buffalo pulled the plow through the thick black earth. Around the rice paddy were many perfectly round ponds. Around some of the ponds were places where nothing grew. That's now, isn't it? It's always now. And with that, the other self vanished. Francis considered a patch of red at his feet. It whirled into a scene around him. Suddenly, his hands and feet were filled with pain. His arms felt like they were being torn from their sockets. It was hard to breathe. Around him was a mob of unruly people. At his feet, 4 Roman centurions were standing guard and pacing about nervously. The sky was getting ominously cloudy. Someone below thrust up a rag soaked in vinegar towards his mouth on a long piece of reed. He turned away, gagging. He was hot. He was thirsty. He was very tired. Even with the mob, he was very much alone. Save yourself, hooted someone in the mob. Climb down off that cross end. The rest was lost in a wave of nausea, but there was nothing to bring up. Somewhere inside him, a small voice spoke. This is existence. You are the only being alive. Suddenly, he felt a calm and peace that he had never felt before. Suddenly, he felt oneness with the centurions, the mob, and the 2 women below him. He felt oneness with the donkeys and oxen on the fringes of the crowd. He relaxed completely. It was raining quite hard. Now, as Francis sat up in the ditch and looked around him, his shoes were gone. His hat was still on his head, but he felt the rain through what used to be the crown. His truck idled patiently behind him. As he climbed up the bank of the ditch, he found one of his shoes. It was still neatly tied, but the back and sole were blown out of it. On the ground beside it was a large scorch mark in the dirt. It no longer mattered, though, because he was looking at it in a new way. He was very grateful to be looking at it at all. He felt oneness with the storm and the trees and the wildlife in the woods. We tripped the light fandango, tripped cartwheels, crossed the floor. I was feeling kind of seasick, and the crowd called out for more. Procol Harum Wider, shade of pale copyright Polydor Records 1966. 8. Pain Spot. Miranda turned 50 last week. All in all, it wasn't so bad. She still had most of her teeth. Her 3 children didn't add too many pounds to her. Best yet, they were all grown up and out of her house. She had the first real job she had since college. Her husband was even still more or less civil towards her. Life was good. Christmas came faster than it did last year or the year before. Lately, everything seemed to be coming too fast. The shopping wasn't done, and it was time for the office party. Miranda's husband was out of town on business. That was a mixed blessing. She missed his company. She missed showing him off to her coworkers. She didn't miss the unconscious control he exerted over her behavior by simply being there. The strawberry daiquiris were excellent. She had several of them before and with the meal. They were so smooth. The DJ put out his tip jar and introduced himself. He asked for requests. A few people got up and danced the Macarena. They were a desultory bunch at best. Miranda sat and sipped her daiquiri and watched. Everybody was just going through the motions on autopilot. They were dancing up a textbook. The electric slide looked choreographed. Miranda made small talk with the son of one of the ladies from the typing pool. He was home on shore leave. He looked like her husband did when he returned from Vietnam. His dress uniform hung where it was supposed to and pulled tight in all the right places. Talking to him made her feel young again. The young sailor felt flattered by the attention Miranda was lavishing on him. He'd only been ashore for a couple of days. Before that, he'd been on patrol in the Persian Gulf. The room ceased to exist for both of them. It was only each other. The DJ moved into an old Dorsey Brothers waltz. They got up and danced. They held each other close and lost themselves into the music. His cologne was intoxicating to her. The DJ moved into more modern material. He played some Donna Summer, then some Bee Gees, and then he played another slow tune. Miranda hadn't danced for years. She realized how much she had missed it. Her husband hadn't taken her dancing since the kids were born. Now they were all grown and gone, and he still hadn't taken her out. The sailor made a nice dancing partner, though. He was gentle, kind, and attentive. He didn't laugh at her when she tried to dance to the new stuff. Her dancing repertoire left off with disco. His started with the electric slide. They really didn't notice how people were staring at them or how they were giggling behind their backs. They were lost in the moment. Miranda realized that she was in absolutely no condition to drive. The party was breaking up and the DJ announced that this was the last dance. He played Last Dance by Donna Summer. When it was over, she fell into his arms. Take me home. Take you home. I have no idea how many daiquiris I've had. There is no way I can drive. You sure? Take me home. You don't even know me. For God's sake, I work with your mother. People are going to talk. I really don't give a damn. Okay. The daiquiris and the dancing took their toll on Miranda. Her knees felt rubbery, and she felt very sleepy as they walked out to his car. He opened the door and helped her into her seat. As he helped her with her seat belt, she grabbed him and kissed him hard. He stepped back away from the car in bewilderment. Conflicting notions ran through his mind. She really didn't look bad for 50. She didn't look bad at all. He had only known her for an hour or so, but here she was another man's wife, wanting him. He took her home. She leaned against him as they headed across town. They hadn't gone very far when she took his hand and put it on her thigh. Then she put her hand on his. She liked the feel of government issue wool against her fingers. She liked even better the feel of the firm muscle under the fabric. She fanaticized about the feel of those young muscles between her thighs. It was a feeling she hadn't felt for years. The young sailor colored as the warm, gentle hands caressed his leg. His hand moved up her thigh and discovered that she was wearing stockings instead of pantyhose. The surprise almost made him go off the road. He had never been with a woman that didn't wear pantyhose. The skin above the stockings was firm and smooth. His fingers explored further and found nothing under her garter belt. Miranda was happy for the small, intimate rental car. She missed bench seats, but the close proximity between the seats came close to making up for that lack. Her fingers attacked George Washington's 13-button fashion design and slipped through the opening to encourage the fingers of the sailor. 30 years hadn't dimmed their skill. She felt like a teenager again. There is a biological imperative that is the fundamental reason for the war between the sexes. That imperative is the extension of one's own DNA into the future. The male tries to capture and impregnate as many females as possible, whereas the female tries to keep the male to herself to make sure only she and no other female gets impregnated by the male she has. The fact that females are more numerous makes it imperative for her to do this, just as it's sometimes imperative for males to fight and kill each other off. The winner gets his choice of females. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. B:/compost how to be happy, the outtake.